Hey YouTube, Jim here. Welcome to Top 10 Archive. The next time you're at a funeral, keep your ears peeled and listen closely. No, not to the chirping birds in the distance, or to the last words being spoken as the coffin is lowered into the ground. Listen for the unsettling sounds of somebody realizing they've been buried alive. Because if there's one thing we've learned from these 10 people who woke up after being pronounced dead, even the big sleep can be misdiagnosed. As we get started, help us out by hitting that like button, and be sure to leave us a comment because we're always looking to engage in interesting conversations with you. Also, don't forget to click the bell so you get notified every time we put out a new video. Number 10. Carlas Cameo. Few things sound more awful than the thought of a knife piercing your skin. It's a pain so shocking that it was enough to wake up 33-year-old Carlos Cameo, who, after a motor accident, was declared dead. Upon arrival at the morgue, an autopsy was started, but stopped abruptly when the examiner saw something peculiar. Their cadaver was still bleeding. Turns out Carlos was a little less dead than originally determined and said he woke up because the pain was unbearable. At least when his wife arrived to identify the body, she was met with one heck of a surprise. Number 9. Kamara Mar Elwood. While they're known for being man's best friend, dogs do have a lethal bite. So when 17-year-old Kumar Mar Elwood was said to have died after being bitten by a stray dog, the story wasn't unbelievable. After a month of treatment in a government hospital, the Managundi village teenager was removed from life support and brought home, where he was believed to have passed from the spreading infection. While carrying his body to his funeral, Kumar's hands and legs showed signs of life. The teen was immediately rushed to the hospital and placed back on a ventilator, where doctors postulated that he had never actually died, but was rather in a deep lethargic paralysis due to anesthesia and sedatives in his system. Number 8. Rosa Celestrino de Assis. The last thing you expect to find in a morgue freezer is a living person, but we can't assume anyone would complain if this were the case. Definitely not Rosangela Celestrino, who, in September of 2011, was visiting her mother's corpse in the morgue, only to find the opposite. Rosa Celestrino de Assis was believed to have died from a pulmonary infection and spent 2 hours wrapped in a plastic bag in the morgue's refrigeration before her very alive body was finally discovered. Despite tests that determined the elder Celestrino had indeed passed away, several hours later, she was pulled from the morgue and rushed to the ICU to be put on a respirator. Number 7. Lyudmila Steblitskaya. On 2 separate occasions, Lyudmila Steblitskaya of Russia was declared dead only to be found full of life later on. Her first death scare was in November of 2011 and sent her daughter, Anastasia, into a tailspin. After hearing that her mother had died during what didn't seem to be a life-threatening hospital stay, Anastasia prepared the funeral arrangements for a Monday morning, 3 days after Lyudmila was declared dead. When she went to pick up her mother's body, Anastasia was shocked to find she was alive and had just spent 3 days in a morgue freezer. The following year, Lyudmila had succumbed to a heart condition, but was revived by doctors several hours after allegedly passing. Number 6. Peng Xiuhua. At 101 years old in 2013, Shinshuidong village resident Peng Xiuhua was still not ready for death to take her. 16 hours after being pronounced dead on January 19th, the elderly Peng greeted the world in quite a creepy fashion. While being transported to her coffin the following day, wrapped comfortably in a cloak, she opened her eyes and flashed a big smile to the caretaker handling her. As if she had been resting peacefully, she nonchalantly spoke, "Hello there." Before long, Peng was surrounded by those that were attending her funeral, confused as to what the fuss was about. With the centennial feeling fine and happy with the turnout, the event turned from somber to a celebration of her lengthy life. Number 5. Fagilyu Mukhametzyanov. At the age of 49 years old, Kazan Russian resident Fagilyu Mukhametzyanov died of a suspected heart attack. At the time of her death, she was surrounded by friends and family, but not because they were there to say their final goodbyes before she passed away. In fact, the crowd around Fagilyu was there to pay respects to her corpse during what was meant to be her funeral. Prior to the shocking incident that found her waking up in the middle of her own funeral, Fagilyu was declared dead by doctors due to a heart-related condition. After miraculously beating death, the woman's eyes fluttered and, for another 12 minutes, she lived before permanently succumbing to heart failure. Number 4. Brighton Dama Zanthe. While his family paid their respects to what they believed to be his lifeless body, Zimbabwe native Brighton Dama Zanthe was slowly waking up from a very strange situation. Over a period of time, Zanthe had been battling a lengthy illness at home before passing away in May of 2013 at the age of 34, or at least that's what his family believed. While waiting in line to view the body, Zanthe's former boss, Lot Gatka, claimed he saw the decedent's leg move. Apparently, so had others at the procession, as many were said to have ran in horror, fearing the former transport worker had returned from the dead to haunt them. Alas, he was not an ethereal being, and instead later recovered from his silly bout of being dead to continue his life. Number 3. Mandlo. This scenario reads like a deleted scene from Pretty Woman. While engaged in a rather strenuous session with a client in the Manor Hotel in Bulawayo, Zimbabwe, a woman known only by her street name, Mandlo, was said to have collapsed and died. When authorities arrived to collect the working girl's lifeless body, she suddenly sprang up in a panic and screamed, "You want to kill me!" Confusion set in, especially since her body was said to have felt cold and dead. What actually happened to Mandlo is a mystery, as she immediately left with another prostitute and the John she was with snuck out before he could be questioned. Number 2. Kelvin Santos. After battling with pneumonia for some time, 2-year-old Kelvin Santos of Brazil succumbed to his illness. In June of 2012, the young Belém resident was undergoing treatment for pneumonia when he suddenly stopped breathing. His family prepped for his funeral the following day, only to have the shock of their lives an hour before it was to begin. Without warning, Kelvin sat up in his coffin and asked his father for some water. Before the screams of shock from his family could subside, he laid back down again, motionless. Hopeful that his son was still alive, Kelvin's father, Antonio Santos, rushed the boy back to the hospital, only for doctors to confirm he showed no signs of life. The funeral was delayed until later that day, in hopes Kelvin would wake up once again, but sadly, he never did. Number 1. Neysi Perez. At the age of 16, the Western Honduras teenager suffered a panic attack after hearing nearby gunfire. But when the severity of the attack caused her to foam at the mouth, her parents believed her to be possessed. During an exorcism, Perez became lifeless and unresponsive. After being rushed to the hospital, it was determined she had passed away. While the story should stop there, it picks up again at Perez's funeral, when a cemetery employee heard noises coming from the teen's grave. The family rushed to break into the tomb, only to find Perez lifeless, but with striking marks on her body. Scratches on her forehead and bruises on her finger indicated the teen had woken up in her grave and desperately tried to get out, eventually suffocating to death. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to give us a like, leave us a comment, and click the bell to get notified about our next new video.